Welcome back to Producer's Toolbox. I'm your host, Carol Adrian, and we are addressing this program to all aspiring creators out there, filmmakers, scriptwriters, artists. And today we have one of our favorite guests who's been on our show since he was in high school several years ago. Brenden Dahl is a rising writer and comedian, and he is a recent graduate of Northwestern. So we're getting you at all different points of your life. It's kind of nice to follow your career as it blooms. Brenden has his eyes on comedy writing in New York City. So anyway, what I really want to start with is I thought some of us know very early in life what our direction is. And some of us don't find out till we're like in our 30s or 40s, but everybody develops at a different pace. And I understand that you were dictating scripts to your babysitters when you were still in the single digits. Is this true, Brenden?
Yes. I always loved telling stories at people. And, before I could actually write them down myself, I had my babysitters write them down. I created little paper booklets and, dictated my novels. And it was definitely a start. I kind of started identifying myself as a creative even then, as a writer. And English class was always my favorite in school at that time. And I just built that identity for myself. Like, I like to write. That's what I do. So yeah, very early on.
I think even Prince George's nanny isn't trained in taking dictation. So you're pretty singular there. How old were you when you started doing that?
I'd say probably like seven or eight was when I really started. I'm sure we still have some of my little booklets upstairs in deep storage. I could find them. But yeah, pretty early on.
What do you think inspired you that early? Was it television or?
I always loved stories of any kind. I think my parents definitely read me aloud to us a lot. And so I think reading books as a family together definitely started that. But I also love movies. I watched a lot of movies. I had we had our little VHSs downstairs that I would watch again and again. But I loved watching movies. And yeah, my parents definitely encouraged a creative household.
You got started very early with writing stories or creating stories and then writing them, having them written down if you weren't writing them down yourself. But let's move ahead a couple years into school. Now, early on, you really started improv, didn't you?
Yeah, so my entryway into theater was through an improv class at a theater company in Philadelphia called MacGuffin Theater and Film. Actually going back to teach improv there this fall, so very full circle, going back to where I started, which is lovely. But yeah, when I was in, I guess it would have been like the end of fourth grade, or maybe the summer between fourth and fifth grade, I started taking improv classes. I didn't want to do musicals. I didn't want to do plays, but my parents saw how much I loved telling stories, and I was very expressive and verbal. And so they signed me up for comedy camp, like improv classes. And I loved it. Come fifth grade, one of the people that I'd met there was also in my class in fifth grade. I wasn't going to do the musical, but because of this person I met, she convinced me, and I was like, all right, fine, I'll do the musical. And it was an adaptation of the Ebenezer Scrooge Christmas Carol. So it was a musical adaptation of A Christmas Carol. Ended up really loving it. Played Mr. Fezziwig, the party host, and had a great experience. And pretty much from then on, I was hooked on theater.
And you were in some other groups that encouraged. And are they still extant in Philadelphia?
Yeah, so the group MacGuffin Theater and Film, they have they called them outreach troops, where kids would audition for these like specialized groups that met more frequently, learned specific skills, and had performances at different venues. Really, it was a way to get kids an opportunity to perform for different audiences. And so it was mostly for the high school aged people at the theater company, but ended up getting in as a seventh grader, which made me feel like I was on top of the world. It was like, I'm so cool. I'm seventh grader in the high school group, and ended up doing that for all throughout high school. And also started in high school with another group called Philadelphia Young Playwrights. And that was where I started to merge my love of writing with my love of theater. And then I had a teacher at my high school that was like, well, you should try playwriting. And she introduced me to this group, Philadelphia Young Playwrights. I ended up getting a play of mine produced with them at Temple University when I was a freshman. And then I was like, oh my gosh, like playwriting is everything that I love rolled up into one. It's theater, it's writing, it's storytelling, it's working with people, it's like new work development. And so I was lucky to get that opportunity and really realize this was something that I really connected with.
It sounds like it moved from a more free-floating kind of participation into a more structured one. I mean, once you get into playwriting, that really, I mean, that has guidelines and bars of stuff, right?
Yeah, I think the shift from I mean, I still acted in shows throughout high school, even while I was getting into playwriting, but I think I learned that part of why I loved improv so much more than regular like acting and why I loved playwriting was because I like to have ownership of the story. I like to tell my own stories and come up with my own narrative. And because I was not the best at taking direction from directors,
You
especially if
were
I didn't
not.
agree with it, if I didn't agree with the creative decisions, even as, whatever, 13-year-old, I would be like, I'm going to do my own thing. I want to do this scene in this way instead. The director would be like, no, this is what I said. Do it this way. And I'd be like, I want to change it. And then I realized I can change whatever I want if I'm improvising or writing my own script. And so that was pretty much the shift. I still acted and, listened to the directors as well as I could throughout high school, but my passion started to really shift towards writing, playwriting in particular.
It's a very singular occupation. Like you were saying, when you don't really want the feedback from outside. But at this point, when you're, I guess, a young teen or mid-teens at this point, where was inspiration coming from? Was it mainly from teachers and directors or watching movies from inside?
Yeah.
What was driving you?
Yeah, so I was, big time nerd in high school, and I was obsessed with Shakespeare in particular, and acted in a bunch of Shakespeare plays. Had a period of my life where I was like, I need to read every single Shakespeare play and rank them. I love ranking things. So I still have that ranking. I have a list of my top Shakespeare plays. King Lear, number one. I had an English teacher at my high school, Germantown Friends. Her name was Anne Gerbner. She was tremendous and really nurtured my writing ability. And I also found some inspiration in like some really specific like niche topic classes I was able to take in high school. My high school did this wonderful thing during January where they allowed you to stop taking all your regular classes and take specialized topic classes. And that abnormal psychology class, we each did like a research presentation on a specific DSM-5 disorder, and I did dissociative identity disorder, multiple personality disorder, and found it fascinating, and being a theater person saw an incredible creative potential in some of the elements of it. This was before M. Night Shyamalan's Split movie came out, so it was a very unique concept at the time to me. But I wrote my first play, the one that ended up getting produced, as a like an allegorical psychological character study of a guy living with his four imaginary friends, but you don't realize they're imaginary friends until like later in the play. But it's about like how his kind of psyche created these figures to comfort his loneliness, nurture his loneliness. And it came from like feelings of loneliness and isolation socially that I'd felt in high school, but also from this research, from this class. And I also wanted it to be very like really funny and have a kind of dark sense of humor. And so, I tried to, it was definitely abstracted from reality. It was not like a literal representation of the disorder as much as a creative interpretation. How would these characters look in a dramatic setting? It was called Imaginary. And seeing that done at Temple, seeing the actors bring it to life, developing the script with the actors, that hooked me. That was such an incredible experience.
Wow. I want to just rewind you just a year or two back into high school because
Yeah.
that's where we first met you. And you had made a short film called Gathering Dust about the
Yeah.
closure of a local high school and how it affected the community. So, was that your first experience with actually filming something?
Yeah, so that was actually part of we called it J term, the January term where we took different classes. That was a J term class that resulted in that documentary. So much of my creative development happened because of this J term program. But yeah, I think that probably was my first experience going through like the entire filming editing process. I had some other classes in high school where I made some films, like short film classes. But that was probably the most like the first like full production where we really like we had nice cameras, we rented nice cameras, we went out, had a sound person, had like an actual like set. Like that was probably the first one that resembled something like a pseudo professional set. It was still very much a guerrilla student production, but we had all the right equipment that they gave us. All of my other, I think, films or things that I filmed up to that point had been much more like home movies, kind of like shoot it on a phone, shoot it on a little camcorder. I didn't really know how to edit. But then I took a class specifically on video editing at the time too. And found that I loved video editing too. I see it as another form of writing and revising. It is
Oh.
beats and timing and understanding story structure. That all comes to play in video editing with the added aesthetic elements of it. So yeah, I think I found that passion for video editing and that understanding of what a film set looks like and how it operates through that documentary for sure.
When you are working with a new project, a new story, does it come to you in one piece, or does it start in a place and you wait to see where it goes? What's the progression?
Yeah, it always starts with I want to write a story about X. I want to, I want to write a story about dissociative identity disorder. I want to write a story or I want to do a documentary about, this high school. It's like the idea of the topic is what comes to me first. And then once I have the topic and I think about the topic, then the medium comes. I want to tell a story about X. What's the best way to tell that story? Is it a movie? Is it a play? Is it a podcast? Is it a short story? Like that comes after I thought of what I want to tell the story about, because I find that different stories work better in different mediums. And as someone that enjoys and consumes all different kinds of mediums, like I tend to uh, come up with that after I already have a sense of what the story is that I want to tell.
Oh, do the characters come to you the same way?
Characters, that comes afterwards. I think I have the topic, like the themes of the story, then the medium, and then the medium informs how the characters come about, because different types of mediums will ask for different amounts of characters. When I write plays, I like to write like small cast plays that take place in very few locations. I like to keep it simple. Part of that is producibility. I want to write things that people can actually put on stage for not a lot of money. I try to keep my plays 70 to 80 minutes max, and I think that's where I'm comfortable working right now. But yeah, that is to say that the characters come after I know the form. If I'm writing a short story and I want to have, I can have more characters in prose than I can balancing dialogue usually. So I'll have a wider scope of characters. The character creation process for me is pretty much the same across mediums when I'm writing. I like to do my character bios. I have all these like questions I like to ask. What do they fear? What are they, where were they born? What do their parents do? What was their job? Like all of that stuff, all that biographical information tends to come about the same way. But the number of characters I focus on and how I focus on them is very dependent on the medium I'm telling the story in.
It's interesting because the different media, well, stagecraft is very different from filmmaking. And
Right.
even the makeup is different.
Right.
Everything.
Right.
And when you were saying about the bios, a lot of times those are things that actors construct, eh, I believe,
Yeah.
for their characters. They want to know,
100%.
where is this coming from?
I like to do that as a writer before I'm writing dialogue, just because I'm very intentional about how people talk and differentiating the way that people talk and basing the way that they talk on like things that I observe in the real world. So very, very often when I'm writing a character, I'll be like, okay, this character talks like a combination of these two people I know, or this is a person that talks like that, kind of like that character from that show I watched a while ago, but with this slight change. I like to, base it in reality when I invite other collaborators into a process. If it's actors, directors in new work, I don't tell them everything that I have, like all of my information. I usually try to let them to come up with their own ideas, because usually their ideas will only enhance and deepen what I came up with. They'll be like, what if this character came from this kind of background? And I was like, oh wait, that's really good. I like that better. I'm going to change it. Let's fix it. That's why I like new play development. And like that's why I was drawn more towards theater than towards film initially, because the like living, breathing script that adapts based on actors' input was totally up my alley. I loved improv. I liked devised work. I liked stuff that felt inherently collaborative.
I noticed a real line, like um, a lot of your earlier stuff that I personally had seen is very serious, and
Mhm.
your plays and short films. And now the last thing I saw of yours was the recent short film going live. And I laughed out loud 3 times, which I rarely do. And it's
Yeah.
9 minutes. And it's so beautifully constructed and so well representative of contemporary communication, really. I mean, it just, and you were all, so you wrote it, but you directed it as well? What were
No, I
your,
brought on another student at Northwestern, very talented director, Lola Selby, is her name. And she was the on-set director. She did all of the like staging and the actors, since it was like it's constructed like a fake live stream, so the actors are filming themselves on iPhones. And so the actors were the cinematographers, but Lola's job was to basically direct and construct how they went about that. And we try to make it, like look like a continuous take for a lot of it. And had a lot of like hidden cuts and like, we flipped the camera from inward to outward view a lot, as people do in live streams. But all of that like shot coordination, that was much more her specialty. I tend to be more script and editing focused, but less like on set focused. But then I was the editor for it. So it was a very
oh,
like back and forth, like collaborative process. I would, send her cuts of my edit and she would be like, oh, I like this take slightly better. Can we tweak that? And we sent it back and forth like 50 times with like slight tweaks. And we brought in one other person as well, or two other people. One person who did graphics. So I edited the film, but on the film there's overlay of comments and like likes and stuff that show the live stream. I don't have the like motion graphic experience to do that, so we brought another student in from Northwestern who specialized in motion graphics and that form of editing, and she did all the comments and did an amazing job, so much better than I could have done. Yeah, and then we also brought in someone to do our sound design editing. My roommate of 3 years, brilliant sound designer Nick Cap, and JG Single was the person who did the graphics. But yeah, great team that came together. But Lola was the main director.
now, when did you go from serious subjects into jumping into deep water comedy?
Yeah, so kind of like the way that I'd been doing theater and writing, I'd always been doing comedy and serious stuff. I kept doing improv. I had my improv group, which was, pure comedy throughout high school. I loved watching stand-up specials. I loved watching sitcoms. I tried my hand at like writing some like sitcoms and stuff in high school as well. But that I always had that and my serious work, and I always saw my like longer form, like my full plays, as like my serious work. It wasn't until I got to college and got really involved in the improv and sketch scene at Northwestern that I realized, frankly, I think the biggest thing is the world got so depressing and things were really tough, and I was like, I don't really want to write anything other than comedy right now. I kind of just want to be around people that make me laugh, doing things that make other people laugh. I think that's the best thing I can give creatively at this point. And I realized that being able to write a piece of long form fiction that sustains an interesting narrative, has elements of other genres, is engaging dramatically and consistently funny, is something that's pretty rare and pretty hard to accomplish. And if you're able to accomplish it, it opens a lot of doors for you. And so I think I I realized like, oh, I can write my plays, I can write my horror plays, my like sci-fi plays, and make them funny and incorporate all these elements of humor. And that's kind of how I can find my niche. I love to write comedy horror, comedy sci-fi, comedy mystery. I like to write things that borrow from other genres and use the creative narrative structure of other genres, but are imbued with satirical angles or comic characters or elements of like absurdist comedy throughout.
Wow, we need more of that. Please keep working.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
in terms of goals, like what's your now you've got your degrees and in a lot of experience for a human who isn't all that old in the grand scheme of things. So, what are you thinking? What's the plan ahead or goals?
Yeah, so I found in college, I was part of this great sketch comedy group called Meow Comedy, and we put together two shows a year that were fully one third sketch, one third improv, one third rock and roll. We had a live band. That group taught me that I really thrive in a writer's room. I think what writer's rooms gave me was the ability to tap into my improvisational experience with pitching jokes and ideas, the ability to tap into my like writing potential, but also just the ability to just churn out content.
I, I was thinking about writers' rooms, and I've always wondered what the SNL, the Saturday Night Live writers' room is like. Like, are they all in there cracking each other up, throwing things? I mean, like, how is it a serious thing or are they making each other laugh? I don't know, but I'd love to see a movie about a writer's room. I mean, for some reason, I'm fascinated by just all these people getting together to be funny.
Yeah, I mean, I've obviously never worked at SNL. Can't speak to that culture specifically.
Yeah, yeah.
I know some folks that have been in like late night writers' rooms, like Seth Meyers or Colbert. I know some people that have done that, and I've talked to them a bit about it. But I can speak to like we structured our sketch group in college very much like SNL. Uh, in that it's a we wrote two sketches a day and we had five rehearsals a week. So we were writing 10 every person in the group was writing 10 comedy sketches a week, which for a college group is pretty absurd and asks an enormous commitment of its students. And so, you know, plenty of people had their issues with just how much we were asking of everyone. From my perspective, I wouldn't have gotten as good as fast in with any other like way, because it just writing that much and just be having to come up with idea after idea, you know, eventually something is going to hit. Like, you know, throw a bunch of stuff at the wall, see what sticks. Like eventually you're going to have a comedy sketch that you can really rock with. And I found that too. Like I'll write 10 duds and then one that's like, oh, this is the one. I found it. And sometimes, especially with comedy, like that kind of just quantity, like just writing the same joke 50 different times until you figure out, oh, that's the one that works. Like that's sometimes the best way to do it. But yeah, I think like the culture of a writer's room in that where it is like a just keep writing, don't worry, like everyone is going to just keep coming up with ideas until you find something that works, and the like collaborative nature where someone will come up with an idea that will inspire you to come up with a better idea. You'll pitch a joke and then someone will like, run with it, make a, riff on it, make new jokes out of that joke. Most of my best sketches I came up with while I was actively in the writer's room listening to other people's sketches. Like creativity fuels creativity. When you hear other people give you amazing ideas, that helps you come up with your own amazing ideas. And just being around people that are really funny and really, really passionate and really like excited about comedy made me a better comedy writer. Like I think that's what a school like Northwestern can give me or gave me, like, was just being around really talented, really funny, really passionate people that want to do this professionally. Because I learned from my peers more than I learned from any class, frankly.
Well, I think you're in a wonderful position to pass stuff on. So I wanted to ask, do you have a couple of, for people who are watching, who might be aspiring to a similar path, whether comedy or drama, what couple pieces of advice would you offer?
Yeah, well, first I'd offer a disclaimer that I just graduated college, have yet to hold any like major job in the industry, and am very much still an aspiring everything. If I were to pass on stuff that I've learned from college and from like my recent grad experience, I would say don't be afraid to send emails. A lot of people in my generation get very anxious or worried about like being overbearing or like like seeming like a tryhard. In my experience, especially older, more established people in the industry, they kind of like to help you and they kind of like to feel like, oh, I'm giving this young kid a chance. And like it's there's really no downside. Like worst case scenario, they see it and they're like, oh, this is like a kid who really wants this. I'm gonna ignore it, whatever. Like that's the worst case scenario. Best case scenario, so much better. They'll give you a call, they'll give you a job, they'll give you great advice. Like there is no reason not to send those emails. So like finding people online, going to shows, finding people after the show, like finding who wrote your favorite TV show and seeing if they have a website and emailing them on their website. I've done that. Like that kind of thing, you never know what might come out of that. That's a big thing.
My mom was a professional writer, and she always said, if you have a question for a writer, write to them and ask them, and they will likely answer you because they are writers.
Right. Writers like to write. They'll write a
Writers
response.
like to write.
For sure.
So we're putting up, Brenden was helped along through these various organizations like Young Playwrights and some others. So in case you're interested in following this particular path or being inspired by it. So Brenden, thank you so much. I can't wait to like see what you're doing. We should check back with you in a year and see what's going on. And you may be coming to us from New York City or Hollywood. I don't know, but
We'll see.
I'm sure
Yeah.
it's like going to be a good place.